Hi, I'm Izzy.
I'm Jaylee.
And I'm Lacey.
And we're doing the Holocaust.
Now we're going to tell you about what it would be like if you were a Jew in one of the camps. The sick people were immediately killed because they couldn't work and they didn't have like a purpose to the Nazis. And if you had a family, you would most likely be split apart and you probably would never see them again. You would have numbers tattooed on your arms for identification, like during the counting, so that you know everyone's there and no one ran away or got out or anything. And you only receive very small portions of food once or twice a day.
Winters were very harsh and they never had proper clothing to keep them warm from the cold. Multiple people were shoved into one bunk and had to be up early for counting, constantly being beaten, sometimes to death for falling out of line or missing countings or just being at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Extermination through labor was something that happened often. They would be worked to the bone just to the point of death. Some prisoners were often rewarded or treated better for beating fellow Jews that they came into the camps with. And then science experiments were performed on Jewish twins, dwarves, homosexuals, and children.
Next, we're going to be telling you some stories about survivors of the Holocaust. And my person is Jacob Blankitny. He was only 16 when he arrived at his first camp, and they separated the men and women, taking his mother and his sister straight through gas chambers along with the rest of the women. But he was lucky to be with his father and in the barracks. At his next camp, 6,000 of them were transported, but only 200 people weren't put through the gas chambers. During the winter, at his next camp, they placed 4 people on each bed, making there be 4 people, 12 people on each bunk. And the Germans took their winter clothes and gave them striped pajamas instead. At 5 every morning, they were given coffee and a piece of bread, and then they were counted. Jacob remembers being beaten with a log for missing the counting one morning. After the counting, they would go to work until 5 p.m., and then they were given 8 fluid ounces of soup for dinner. At his next camp, Jacob remembers when they were asked their occupations, and he answered bricklayer or carpenter, while his father answered bricklayer. And the people who answered carpenter had to be moved to a new camp. And the last thing his father said to him before he left for his camp was, "I will not see you anymore. It may be that you have been able to save yourself now that they offered you another place to go. But instead of going, I prefer to stay here and pass as a sick person. Though I am abandoning you, you have an obligation to go and save yourself." Jacob was put on the worst job, the railroads, at his new camp. And after a harsh beating, he was very sick too, he had to be put in the camp hospital, but he convinced them to let him go back to work because he didn't want to be transferred and killed. And his next camp he believes is what saved his life and is the reason he survived the Holocaust. He was just making wooden spoons by a fire, which is surprising that was one of the jobs. But then after the Americans started making progress in the war, they were all moved to the mines, which killed 400 to 500 people a day. Once the Americans started making more and more progress, they lined up all of the Jews and were going to shoot them, but they said that they weren't worth the bullet. But then the Americans freed all of the Jews, and Jacob went back to his hometown, where there were 4,000 people originally in it, but only 42 of them survived.
My story is about a lady named Edith Rubin who entered the Holocaust at the age of 13. One of her vivid memories from her childhood was that she used to play with her neighborhood kids, but as soon as the Holocaust started, she was no longer allowed to play with them because she was Jewish. She entered the camps at 13 and was put through very, very hard labor her first year in the camps and almost died multiple times. But her story doesn't focus on the negative, it focuses on the positive points of her time in the Holocaust. There's one memory that she has, and it's of this guard. She doesn't know his name, she doesn't know his guard number, she doesn't remember anything all about him. She just remembers that he used to bring extra food for her and her fellow Jews. He would lay it on the ground, turn around, and not look back. Because technically, if he were to look back and see them eat the food, he would have to beat them or hurt them or kill them. But he would turn around, not look back, and distract the other guards from seeing them. Edith got out of the camps at around the age of, it was either 17 or 18, and went back to her hometown, found her sister, Nobody else in her family survived, and they moved to around the New York area. She got married at the age of 27, had 3 beautiful kids and 6 grandkids.
After all kinds of humiliation, prisoners from all occupied Europe were transported in fully crammed freight cars with no food or water to Auschwitz. After a journey that sometimes took days and killed many, they arrived at a long platform camp where SS doctors, who in a few seconds would decide the fate of the deportees, who would become a slave and die from exhaustion, hunger, and torture, who would serve as a guinea pig in scientific experiments, and who would be killed straight away. The prisoners were asked about their age, their occupation, and their health, and depending on their answers, the SS men gave their verdict. If his thumb pointed to one side, the inmate was fit for work, but if it pointed to the other side, it meant immediate execution. Children and old people were automatically deemed unfit for forced labor, and therefore sent directly to gas chambers. The same was true for mothers and babies, and as a general rule for all people who were considered weak or sickly. Victims had to give the camp SS doctors the few belongings they carried. Their baggage was piled on a platform and sent to Germany and sold there. Still days from the long journey, knowing nothing about their friends and relatives' fate, those who passed selection would be faced with inhumane conditions and would lead to their death within weeks or months.
I'm Lacey.
I'm Jaylee.
And I'm Izzy.
Thank you for watching our podcast. We hope you learned something beneficial. Bye.
Bye.